Course. This is Say It Loud, the place for discourse. I'm glad to see you. And let me see what we got going on here. Okay, there we go. Now we're live. I thought we were having an issue, but it looks like things are good to go. So it's Friday, right? End of the week. And I'm happy to see it. We got a long weekend and we have a bit of time, so let's talk. Before we get into the topics that we're going to talk about today, I want to show you guys this brief thing. Because of all of the moves that the Trump administration is making, it's kind of shifting the board, right? For a long time, we've said, hey, America's is a superpower, China's a superpower, Russia's a superpower, and mostly the chess pieces have been laid across the map, right? We know about everybody's power. We know where everybody is. We know about their moves. Well, it's kind of shifting. We're going to Venezuela. We're talking about taking Greenland. We're talking about bombing Iran again. And the board is kind of changing. It's a new game on the way. And the Prime Minister of Canada, I believe his name is Mark Carney, listen to what he had to say. This is an interesting quote.
I believe the progress that we have made in the partnership sets us up well for the new world order.
The partnership that Canada has made is setting them up for the new world order, right? He's talking about China. The pieces are moving, right? Things are shifting, and life as we know it is gone, right? America has been on top for a very, very long time. And I hope that it continues that way, right? I'm an American. But because of the Trump administration, their policies, their moves, they're not getting approval from Congress to do the things that they want to do or are actually doing. It's kind of throwing everything into disarray. And we'll see where the future leads us, right? So they had this thing where it says, Carney slashes Canada's 100% tariff on Chinese EVs and announces up to 49,000 Chinese electric cars will be imported into Canada with only a 6.1% tariff. In return, China has agreed to slash tariffs on canola imports from 84% to 15% by March 1st. Alliances are tightening and they're not with the U.S., right? And that's an issue. If we want to continue being as powerful as we are, as strategic as we are, we have to make sure that we're taking care of our neighbors and our friends. That doesn't seem to be happening, right? We're telling our friends that we will take your land, that it's more advantageous for us to hold it than it is for you to hold it. And it's just not a good position to be in. Start making enemies of your friends. So that's where we are. That's where China is on their relationship with Canada, right? Becoming more powerful as America kind of throws their relationships into disarray. We told Canada, hey, you're going to be the 51st state. Canada said, I actually don't want that. Then we decided, okay, well, we'll just puppeteer Venezuela and then we'll go and take Greenland. And Greenland doesn't want our protection. Not our protection. They don't want to be Americans either. So that's where we are. That's our standard in the world. All right, so what are we talking about today? We're talking about Trump and this idea of changing your way of life, right? The Trump administration, because of the tariffs, because of prices, which, like I've said, I've admitted the gas prices have gone down. That's an excellent thing. I'm driving up and down the road multiple days. I'm happy to see that the gas prices are low. So Trump gets credit for that. But there was a quote in December around Christmas, I believe, where he was telling people, hey, if you're not going to be able to afford things, right, maybe your kid gets $2 instead of 30. Like the message is lower your expectations, right? As rich as America is as a country, don't expect to have nice things. Expect for your kids to get a little less because the policies that Trump is implementing are his ideas. Oh, they're just going to screw you over in the short term, and then we're going to make America great again, and we're all going to be rich on the back end. Well, I don't know that that's going to be necessarily true, but the president thinks that it is. So here is him quoting. Here's his quote from, excuse me. Here's his quote from, what is this? Oh, this was months ago. This is actually early into the tariff. So this is before anything really started kicking off. Check this out.
The children will have $2 instead of $30. Going to be open. Well, maybe the children will have $2 instead of $30, you know, and maybe the $2 will cost a couple of bucks more than they would normally. But we're not talking about something that we have to go out of our way. They have ships that are loaded up with.
There you go. Expect less. That was the president's message when he started implementing these tariffs. We knew that prices were going to rise. And obviously, you know, people have said multiple times, oh, Trump is a billionaire. Trump's net worth has increased multiple billions of dollars since he's been in office. Is he going to suffer because of his tariff policies? Is he going to suffer because of the disarray that he's throwing the world into? Of course not. It's just on the shoulders of the rest of us. So that's where we are in the world. So I was watching a clip that was floating on Twitter from News Nation. They're a right-leaning news organization, or maybe they're just a propaganda machine. And they kind of echoed the sentiment that Trump has said, right? Like, expect less. They said, we've run over 1,000 simulations. It can cost, they're basically putting out a statement like, hey, there is a way to feed yourself on less money as prices in the groceries increase, and they're not necessarily coming down as fast as people want them to, or as fast as the Trump administration expected them to. So why don't you just lower your expectations? And here's a way for you to get a cost-efficient meal. This is their idea of how Americans should live. Check this out.
I think the question you're asking, and it's a really important one, is while we're asking Americans to reconsider what they're eating, are we actually asking Americans, especially those who are living on the margins, are we asking them to spend more on their diet? And the answer to that is no. We've run over 1,000 simulations. It can cost around $3 a meal for a piece of chicken, a piece of broccoli, corn tortilla, and one other thing. And so there is a way to do this that actually will save the average American consumer money.
You've done the analysis on that, because that's one of the criticisms I heard from some, nutrition folks who said, like with the event you mentioned, all the protein, saying, all right, well, steak, obviously, it's expensive. So are you asking people to spend more money with these new dietary guidelines than in the past? You say no?
That's right. And the answer to that is absolutely no. Now, there are, as most things are coming down, there are a few outliers. Beef has been one of them, but ground beef is coming down. But
Yep. That's what they're telling you. Expect less, spend less, and basically ration your meals. This is this is their plan for affordability, because things are not working out under the Trump administration's plan, their policies, as well as they thought. Look at the comments. A piece of chicken, a piece of broccoli, a tortilla, and one other thing. This is what the lady told you that you can afford, right? As prices are going up and you have to switch up your diet in order to sustain yourself. And just remember, at the end of the day, when those SNAP benefits when the people on the left were asking Republicans to release the SNAP benefits during the government shutdown, they were like, no can do. They wanted to see you suffer. And they're continuing that narrative, telling you, oh, just live on this meal here. This is what you can have if life is becoming unaffordable for you. Maybe don't enjoy a steak. Maybe don't enjoy some salmon or something. Get you a little slice of chicken, some broccoli, a tortilla, and maybe some rice if you can afford it, if you can fit it in there. Let's check out this next comment. It says, 4 years straight, Republicans, MAGA, and mainstream media bitched and moaned about inflation and prices of groceries, etc. Now they're telling you, only buy your daughter one doll, just eat Hamburger Helper, just eat turkey instead of steak. And now this BS. Fucking hypocrites. Absolutely. Absolutely. And look at what this person posted. A meal over at Mar-a-Lago. Maybe that was during their holiday party, Thanksgiving or Christmas. Not entirely sure. But this is the plan that they have for you. You're supposed to give all your tax money to the billionaires. You're supposed to shut up, allow Trump to send Argentina $40 billion, give the farmers in the Midwest that he screwed up with the tariffs and the policies against China, give them a $12 billion bailout, give all of these corporate subsidies. And then what are you supposed to expect from the government? Nothing. You can't even get the SNAP benefits that were in reserve if you need them, right? You can't even get these Affordable Care Act subsidies if you need them. The message to Americans is give us your money and expect nothing. And I got to tell you, it's not a way to live. All right, so one of the things that Trump was really pushing during the last year, during Thanksgiving season, he was like, "Oh, well, I'm making things more affordable because the Walmart, the price for the Walmart Thanksgiving meal is less than it was in 2024." I know a lot of people were saying that it was being repeated through mainstream media, and it turns out that it's not necessarily the case. It says, so this was a fact check. It says, we use Walmart's website to calculate the value of items added, subtracted from, and downsized in the 2025 basket. The prices were as of November 12th. And included price sales that day. So they're talking about how there was a lower price, but that's because there were less items, right? It says, in all, the additions to the 2025 basket total $7.79, while the subtractions and downsized products total $24.35, which means the packet declined in value $16.50, essentially. It declined $16.50. This is what Trump was toting, 2 months ago, saying, "Oh, well, life is becoming more affordable under me because Walmart is giving you a cheaper price for their value meal for Thanksgiving." Not giving you the nuanced position that they're giving you less and lower quality things. And yes, they're adding some stuff, but it doesn't cover what you're losing from 2024. And, Tupac, he's on the thumbnail, so let me tell you why I included him. Tupac said they have money for war but can't feed the poor. Right? Trump, the president that is telling you, "Oh, just buy less dolls." The right mainstream media that's telling you, "Oh, just eat a little less or switch up your diet. You can live on $3 a day to eat." These are the same people that are advocating for increasing the defense budget, right? The Department of Defense, Trump is asking, not necessarily directly the department, they're asking for $1.5 trillion in 2027, right? FY 2027, which is in October. They're asking for $1.5 trillion, which is almost 2 times what it currently is. I think it's like 800 billion now, somewhere between 800 billion and a trillion. So on the low end, it's almost double that. At the high end, it's a 50% increase from what it already is. But the message that they're pushing is, "Oh, well, you deserve less." And I really can't believe this is the time that we're coming to, because why is Trump asking for more money? It's because he's intending to go start some shit in other parts of the world, whether that be Venezuela, Greenland, Colombia, Cuba. They're like, "Hey, we're not focused on the things that are happening internally and the people that are here in America. We're focused on things that are happening outwardly, and we're going to go, quote unquote, conquer all of these different countries in order to bring their resources here." And to me, honestly, it spells doom and gloom for the United States as we know it. Because it's like, if you have to dip your hands into all of these different pots and pull out their oil and their resources, it's an admission that, hey, things are not working so well here that we need to start stealing and extracting the wealth from other countries in order to sustain what it is that we, the machine, the American machine, right? The economic machine that we have here. So we'll see how this thing goes in the future in terms of all of these different fronts that Trump is trying to approach or he's being advised to approach. But like I said, their message to me, to you, is just expect less, right? The money that you pay in taxes, it's not for you. It's not for you to have some sort of social social services. It's for billionaires. It's for businesses to get tax cuts. It's to fund wars in foreign countries. But you deserve nothing. That keeps being the message from this administration. Check this. I don't know if you guys remember the movie The Interview with Dave Franco, but check this out. This is America right now. This is when Dave Franco, he had met Kim Jong-un, and he was, they were kind of friendly. They were getting along. And then he had a little bit of a falling out with him. He's like, let me walk the streets. Let me find out what's really going on. He wanders into this grocery store that has been touted as being, plentiful, and all the groceries are there for anybody to go in and shop at any time. There's a bunch of food and people are not starving like has been reported. Remember, this is about North Korea. But check this out.
Fake! Fake grapefruits! Fake! Liar! You liar!
Man, I don't know if you guys remember that movie. It was not like a great movie, but it was interesting. It was pretty funny at the time when it came out. And I know that Dave Franco has been canceled for some of the stuff that he's did, but that doesn't take away from the fact that, it doesn't take away from the art. So Trump, in his infinite wisdom, he's been trying to do like the 50-year mortgages. He's been trying to do the Trump gold card. And last week he put out a tweet that said, hey, I would like the credit card companies to cap interest rates at 10%, at least for a year. I talked about how Bill Ackman came out and said, oh, well, we don't like that because we're not going to be able to make money and blah, blah, blah. He ended up deleting that tweet. Bill Ackman did. But this is, let me see. What is this guy's title? Kevin Hassett. Whatever he is in the Trump administration, this is the agenda that they're trying to push. Check this out.
This 10% cap on credit card interest rates obviously has the banks talking, and a lot of them are very worried about this. This new potential card cap could wipe out the earnings from the card portfolios for a year. Those are the expectations there. If applied to all cards, analysts say it would hurt large bank pre-tax earnings by between 5 and 18%, and wipe out earnings for the.
AKA, they're not going to do that. Right. The banks are not going to limit their earnings and screw over their investors because Trump tweeted out, hey, maybe we should cap the interest rates at 10%. It's been talked about like, hey, he doesn't even have the power to do this through executive order to make them cap the interest rates. Right. There'd be a lot of backroom deals and all of this stuff. But Trump by himself does not have the power to do that. But that's not even the most important part. Is that he's putting out these ideas with no plan moving forward. And people are going to say, oh, well, at least he gets credit for the idea. I had the idea that I wanted to be a millionaire by the time I was 21. It didn't work out. You only get credit for the execution, right? When when you show the results of your ideas and your work. Trump, he's putting out this stuff that he has no hope of actually passing or actually implementing. And we know that the banks are not going to take less money so that you and I can have more money. They're not going to do that. You know how I know? Because even when you don't have money, if you overdraft on your account, they'll just put you in the negative. So when you get money, it's going to them. So if you think that they're going to take a loss of 5 to 18% because Trump says so, just to be on his good side, they're like, fuck no. Our whole entire purpose is to make money. And your entire purpose is to open the floodgate and pull down the red tape in order for us to make money. They're not going to listen to this.
The monolines like a Cap One Financial. Your thoughts on the president putting this in place? Obviously, Congress would have to codify this for law. Will these banks be forced to follow this?
Well, I think, we've been in conversations with the big banks, with CEOs of many of the big banks, who think that the president's onto something, that he's got a great idea that they could potentially voluntarily provide for people who are in that sort of sweet spot.
I'm not believing nothing they say until actual bank CEOs come out and do what they if they're having conversations, I'm not going to believe it until it actually happens, right? And until one of these CEOs comes out and makes a statement or writes, some sort of statement, I'm not believing what they say. They always say, oh, we made a backroom deal. We're having conversations. People agree to this. Remember, that's the same thing they said about the oil companies. And then I believe it was Exxon or something. They basically said, we don't want the fucking crude oil down in Venezuela. And Trump was like, well, I'm going to bar you from going then. Okay, you can't fire me after I already quit. But let's go back a second.
Voluntarily provide for people who are in that sort of sweet spot of not having financial leverage very much because they don't have access to credit, but they have enough income and stability in their lives so that they're worthy of credit. And so our expectation is that it won't necessarily require legislation because there'll be really great new Trump cards presented for folks that are voluntarily provided by the banks.
Yeah, another thing that Trump got to sign his name onto to try to make it more appealing. Nobody wants it. Just like they didn't want the Trump gold cards for skipping the line in immigration. It was originally going to be $5 million. Now it's $1 million. They have an entire website. I can't wait for them to give us the updated fake numbers. At sometime in 2026, they're going to say, oh, we had 500,000 people sign up and give us $1 million. We're going to send you guys $2,000 tariff checks. No, they're not. They have no plan. They're throwing anything at the wall, and you don't get points just for having an idea. It's about the implementation and execution. And like I said, the banks are not going to take less of a profit in order to help the everyday consumer. They're only going to do that if they think that it's advantageous, and at some point they're going to get more money on the back end. And I don't see how that is a short-term benefit when they can just continue to charge people the high interest rates they're already charging. Get the money now and continue to get the money later. My personal opinion, I don't think people should, things are extremely expensive. So I understand why people use credit, but I'm of the Dave Ramsey approach, right? The borrower is slave to the lender. And if you can, to do your best to stay out of debt, because it's golden handcuffs, right? You're like, oh, well, I don't have to take my money out and give it to somebody. I'll just use OPM, OPM, other people's money. Had a brain fart for a second. But that's Trump's plan, man. Decrease what your expectations are. That's the message that they're pushing. And now they're going to tell you, oh, we're going to help you by getting the banks to lower the interest rates, and they're not. They have no way of doing that. At least no short term and no rapid approach to doing that. So I don't see a way that it's going to happen. And I don't believe half the shit that Trump says. And I don't think that he does either. All right, let me see what else I got for today. I was going to talk about Iran, but it looks like Trump has kind of backed off of them. Actually, we'll talk about it. I don't remember what I put up here. Yeah, so let's talk about this immigration thing. Let's talk about Minnesota, right? So, things have been escalating in Minnesota. We've been seeing all of these different videos that have been happening with ICE, right? Confrontations between the public with ICE officers. We saw people in the house. I have a video coming out in the morning. People in the house were essentially saying, hey, we want Kristi Noem taken out of her role over at DHS as the head of DHS because all of these instances and confrontations that have been happening under her leadership, right? Contrast that and what the Trump administration is doing in that regard to Trump's message over to the people in Iran. Check this out. It says, oh, here we go. This is over on Truth Social. This was from the 13th. So we're a few days removed, and I think tensions have kind of died down over there in terms of Trump threatening to bomb them. But he said, Iranian patriots, keep protesting. Take over your institutions. Say the names of the killers and abusers. They will pay a huge price. Obviously, he's like, we're going to put them on trial. We're going to take them out of the country like we did Maduro. And they're going to have to face the consequences, or we're just going to bomb them. Whatever his solution is, obviously is not going to be good. He doesn't feel like he's shackled by the law in terms of, his power and control. So whatever fate that he thought that was just for them is the one they'll face. It says, I've canceled all meetings with Iranian Iranian officials until the senseless killing of protesters stops. Help is on the way. MIGA, President Donald J. Trump. So, as it's been reported, right, they were truthfully, they were taking people out over in Iran, right? The protesters, they were rising up. The government was taking them out. So I'm not saying that the situation wasn't tenuous over there, but contrast the words that he has for people over in Iran versus what he has for people over in Minnesota. When they shot Renee Good in the face, when she was executed by that ICE officer, what they said was, oh, well, she is a terrorist. She's a domestic terrorist. She's a paid actor, all of this different stuff, right? They always call everybody that opposes what they're doing a paid actor. He tells people here in America, in Minnesota that are protesting, oh, you guys are paid actors, you're rebels, you're domestic terrorists. And then he tells people over in Iran, you're supposed to resist being oppressed by your government. It's an entirely different conversation when he's removed from the denigration, right? When it's not his face on all of the terror that's happening over in Minnesota. So this is another thing he's kind of backed out on, but this was more recent. I just saw this on Twitter, but check out the message that he had to the people over in Minnesota. If the corrupt politicians of Minnesota don't obey the law and stop the professional agitators and insurrectionists, he's calling the people over in Minnesota insurrectionists, but he just pardoned 1,500 insurrectionists from January 6th last year, almost immediately after he was sworn in and got into office. If you don't stop them from attacking the patriots of ICE who are only trying to do their job, I will institute the Insurrection Act, which many presidents have done before me, and quickly put an end to the travesty that is taking place in our once great state. Thank you for your attention to this matter, President DJT. That's the message that he has to people over in Minnesota. You see the way that the propaganda machine works. He tells you, oh, it's the politicians that are inciting the people. They're making them corrupt. They're turning the population against ICE when ICE is just doing their job. Well, we saw a lady get shot multiple times, right? I know there's a lot of controversy about if it was justified or unjustified, but I don't understand why. It was clearly and completely unjustified, right? We see multiple videos. I talked about how there was a kid over in Target doing his job. You got 3 or 4 ICE officers. They dogpile on top of him, whisk him away, find out he is an American citizen, and drop him off in a Walmart parking lot 8 minutes away. This is what we have to experience in America versus what he's telling people over in Iran, right? Protest and essentially, what's the word I'm looking for? It starts with a P. I can't remember it. But essentially protest and compel your government to treat you with dignity and humanity and follow the laws of your nation. That's what he's telling people halfway across the world. Meanwhile, you deserve to get punched in the face by ICE. You deserve to get shot in the face. You deserve to be denigrated and disrespected. And you deserve to walk around with your freedom papers. That's what he's telling you. An entirely different message when it's not his regime that is being called out for the things that they're doing. So I want to play this thing with Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan, somebody that was very supportive of Trump initially. He's kind of having second thoughts, right? He's like, hey, I don't think we're necessarily getting what we bargained for. And I have some thoughts about that, but I'm going to let Joe Rogan speak and tell you what he thinks. And then, of course, this is Say It Louder, the place for discourse. I'm going to tell you what I think.
Once someone is here, they should be able to stay in this country, and ICE is operating illegally, and we shouldn't have militarized groups of people roaming the streets, just showing up with masks on, snatching people up, some of them U.S. citizens, and shipping them to countries they didn't even come from. So that's why they have to wear a mask. If you want them to do that job, if you want them to be able to deport 500,000 people over a year, which is a lot of people, if that's the real number, they're going to be. Their life's going to be at stake. Yep. You're not going to be able to get people to do the job. unless you allow them to be anonymous. And then, again, allowing them to be anonymous creates a whole host of other problems where you could have people
Indeed it
pretend
does.
to be them. And how would you know who's who and who's not?
So what Joe Rogan said is true, right? You have masked officers. You don't know who they are. They're snatching people up. You could lie. You know, you could put on the cargo pants, put on some shoes that you get from 511 Tactical, put on a hat, put on a black vest and a long sleeve shirt, and you could go out and say, hey, I'm with ICE. You start snatching people up, putting them in the back of your van, and all of a sudden we have people doing impersonations of law enforcement officers, right? What Joe Rogan is saying is absolutely true. My issue is Joe Rogan was a proponent and helped not legitimize, because Trump was running in his second term, but he kind of helped legitimize Trump again to the public and help him get back into the seat that he's in. Trump ran on a platform of mass deportation, right? And Trump is a petty dude. He was looking for some sort of like political retribution against people that he feels like disrespected him. This is why they've been repeatedly trying to cut funding to Democratic-led states and cities. He's talking about Chicago. He's talking about Minneapolis. He's talking about places over in California, while completely flying over all these red states, which have the highest murder rates across the country. Like the majority of the top 10 highest murder rates in the country are over in red states and cities, right? But Joe Rogan was one of the people that Joe Rogan, Andrew Schultz, Theo Vaughn, all of these guys are kind of like not necessarily vibing with the thing that Trump is doing in terms of immigration, in terms of ICE and his administration, their policies, but they are the people that helped normalize this stuff initially. Not that they knew what the entire fallout was going to be, but sometimes you have to think about the third and fourth order effects of the decisions that you're making, or the people that you're gaslighting, not the people that you're gaslighting, the people that you're highlighting, right? I'm not saying that they only got Trump elected, but they absolutely did throw a little bit of gas on his fire to help him get back to the top. And I told you guys that I almost voted for Trump, but as I started to, for most of my 20s, like I was working. I was trying to build a career. I wasn't focused on politics. But as I started to learn a little bit more, and I was looking at the decision that happened with Roe v. Wade, and I feel like people should be able to do whatever it is that they want with their body, right? Whether that be, I don't think that people should have abortions, but I don't think that it's my decision. I don't think that people should do drugs, but I don't think that it's my decision. If you extrapolate that out, I don't think it's the government's decision to tell people what they can do that only affects them, right? Now, I couldn't vote for Trump because I'm like, hey, if you're willing to put people in the Supreme Court that are going to vote on this certain thing and it's going to limit people's freedoms and their autonomy, what happens if we have more Supreme Court justices, their seats get vacated and we have to put more people there? You're going to have what, 8, 9 right-leaning Supreme Court justices? I said, there's no possible way that I can support him when you don't even think that people should have autonomy. Joe Rogan is way more politically inclined, or he's having these conversations face to face with people. You have to think about the third and fourth effects of the decisions that you make. Not just, oh, well, I like Trump and he sat down with me and brought attention to my podcast and I got money and we laughed and joked together. You can't just think about the immediate. You have to think about how these things are going to affect not only you, but the people around you, the people that you care about. So I'm not necessarily saying that Joe Rogan is completely responsible for the stuff that Trump is doing, but you also don't get a pass because as a 50-year-old man, I think he's around 50, late 40s, whatever he is, you should know better, right? Let me see what else we got going on here. I can't even, man. I tell you, when you have kids, your brain kind of gets a little fuzzy throughout the day. My kids wake up early in the morning and I'm up until I go to sleep. So, it's no naps, it's no nothing. But I love it. These my kids. Okay, so we have the DOJ, Trump's DOJ. They're investigating Tim Walz. That's what's happening over in Minneapolis right now. This is a brand new article. I'm just finding out about this. So we're going to read it together. We're going to find out what we think. This is from Axios. It says Trump DOJ. Actually, hold up. There was something else that I wanted to pull in here. Okay, this is what I want to read first. So this was fairly new at the time too, about an hour ago. It says judge limits ICE tactics in Minnesota. A federal judge ordered ICE agents to stop retaliating against protesters and observers in Minnesota. That's why I wanted to bring this up. Look at the way that this is framed. A federal judge ordered ICE to stop retaliating. Stop retaliating. What is a retaliation? That means I've done something to you, and then you are given like a cause and effect, right? I've done something to you, and you are giving me an equal and opposite, or maybe not equal, an even greater reaction. Retaliating is giving somebody a reaction to something that has already been done. What ICE agents are doing is antagonizing protesters. The protesters are retaliating. And then because ICE has the power, they are ratcheting up whatever that retaliation is. So, words mean something. And I like Axios. I read all of their top articles in conjunction with other stuff. But this has to be reported accurately. It's not the protesters that are going after ICE. It's the protesters exercising their First Amendment right to be wherever on any public street or place in the U.S., exercising their First Amendment right to protest against federal agents that are paid by their tax dollars. They're not doing anything in the wrong, right? So it says retaliating against peaceful protesters and observers. People that are watching are apparently antagonizing those officers as well. Minnesota officials have banked on federal courts stepping in to de-escalate tensions around the Trump administration's increasingly forceful immigration enforcement campaign in the Twin Cities. The case involves 6 plaintiffs, and Minneapolis, St. Paul, and state officials have filed a separate suit that seeks to end the ICE surge. I think they have about 3,000 officers over there. Prior to Renee Good, they had 2,000 officers over in Minnesota in totality. And then once the thing happened with her, they're like, hey, we're going to send more agents. We're going to have more instances in which these types of interactions can happen, right? Because you got to remember, the thing that happened with Renee Good it's tragic, right? It is a small minority of incidents that has occurred in terms of all the interactions ICE is having. But it's the most extreme incident. And then as tensions are going up, you're saying, hey, let's introduce another 1,000 people. That's another 1,000 people that can make an infinite number of decisions about their interactions with the protesters. So, what is the intention? A lot of people have talked about, hey, do you think it's best to continue to essentially tread on the protesters and laugh in their face? You're like, hey, this thing happened with this lady, and then we're going to send more. Here's another one. I didn't think that it was a good idea, but it was up to the Trump administration to make that decision. Let me see. Somebody's texting me. It's a promotion. It's nothing important. I'm closing that. So it says, U.S. District Judge Catherine Menendez barred ICE agents from arresting or pepper spraying people for simply observing or criticizing the federal government's actions. The judge ruled that safely following ICE vehicles does not on its own justify a traffic stop, protecting an increasingly common tactic used by Minnesotans to track raids in the Twin Cities. I don't understand why this had to be taken to court. Why isn't the leadership, even the direct leadership of these ICE agents, telling them that people are allowed to drive on the same streets as ICE? How is that not common knowledge? And I'll tell you how. Because the Trump administration, the training went from 6 months down to 6 weeks. right? 47 days, 7 weeks and almost 7 weeks. 47 days because Trump is the 47th president. And when you're expediting people through that process, you have to shrink the curriculum. That means some things are not important. Like, hey, people have a right to be on these public roads, regardless of if they're agitating you or not. If they're not presenting you a situation in which you're in imminent danger, you can't just shoot them in the face. Oh, the guy that shot Renee Good, he was a veteran, right? He was a veteran in the military and he was a long-term agent. But hey, you can't keep walking in front of somebody's vehicle and you don't have the right to shoot them just because they're driving off and calling them a fucking bitch. This type of shrunk training environment to 47 days versus 6 months, which it was originally, that kind of breeds the environment where there are gaps in people's experience and their knowledge and what is permissible and not permissible. So, a lot of people. So that's where it is, right? And I'm glad the judge came out and said it, because it makes no sense that we have to tell the people that we're paying tax dollars, hey, we also have the right to protest and not necessarily agree with your actions. And we can express that, even if it's a little agitating to you. And you shouldn't pepper spray people. You shouldn't throw. There was something that was on Twitter where they were saying there was an ICE agent that threw pepper spray into a car or some sort of canister into a car, and there were 6 kids in the car. I believe the gentleman, he was going to an appointment or he was doing something completely minding his business, right? But there's ICE agents that are looking for confrontations, and they're going to get the good side that makes them look in the best light, right? To further the agenda. But people are tired of these interactions. They're not necessarily agreeing that immigration enforcement is at the top of their totem pole in terms of issues, right? We talked about at the beginning of this video that the Trump administration is telling people essentially, and people on the right are telling citizens to expect less, right? You can afford a $3 meal if you get chicken, broccoli, or tortilla and one other thing. So people are like, hey, I'm fucking starving, actually. I don't want this increased budget to ICE. I don't want this increased budget for the Pentagon in 2027, FY 2027. I actually just want to be able to eat and sustain myself. I want to be able to afford a home without the idea of a 50-year mortgage, which Trump has been trying to float. So people are not filling these ICE things, and it looks like a judge is kind of trying to put some handcuffs on what it is that they're doing, and we'll see how this ends up playing out. We know that the people on the right, they like to say, oh, well, this is a biased judge. The judge is just against Trump, and they have Trump derangement syndrome, and all of these protesters need to be shot in the face. That is the sentiment that we've been seeing for the past week since the incident with Renee Good. And somebody has finally stepped up and done something within their power that hopefully puts a little bit of a leash, not a little bit, puts a tight leash on these out of control ICE officers. Let me see if we got anybody down in the chat. No, nobody want to talk to me today. That's cool. Tell me what you think. Tell me what you think about ICE. Tell me if you're somebody that's down in the chat and you agree with ICE, let me know. If you think that, their tactics are okay or what they're doing is okay and they need to ratchet it up, you let me know. I think that it's heavy-handed, and I'm tired of it. I'm tired of going on Twitter and seeing time after time where people are being brutalized. Like, we've had enough. You said violent criminals, now you're just getting anybody, and it makes no sense to me. All right, let me see what else we got on here. I got all the time in the world. Monday is a holiday. It's nice and quiet in here. I got all the time in the world. So let's hang out. You guys tell me what's on your mind if you're down here. Let's look at this thing from Geraldo Rivera. He is on Piers Morgan, and he gives a statement. Let's see what he has to say. I believe this is in response to the immigration thing as well. I know that I'm beating a dead horse, but it is what it is.
Everybody's ignoring the original sin, which was to use a brigade-sized deployment of paramilitary forces to presumably or reportedly, or the pretense was, to go after the worst of the criminal aliens. Did that happen? Absolutely not. What happened instead? You had this deployment of these masked desperados, 2,000 strong, descending on the community with attitude. There was hostility on both sides from the get-go. And what in the world are paramilitary forces doing enforcing immigration law to begin with?
You know, I wonder if Geraldo Rivera is worried about potentially being stopped or captured by ICE, or some sort of like interaction with ICE, because he is somebody that's on the right. So you would assume that, hey, he's going to kind of acquiesce to some of Trump's policies or the Trump administration's ideas. But he does, you know, his last name is Rivera. He does, what's the word that I'm looking for? He doesn't look like a white American, right? And even we saw the situation that happened with Renee Good, so it doesn't necessarily matter. But I wonder if he has any hesitation about supporting these type of policies because they're wrong, but also in addition to the fact that, you know, he could get mistaken for, you know, like an agitator or something, or somebody that's on the left, or somebody that is, you know, an immigrant that needs to be, ICE is trying to find out if they're here legally or if they have any papers. I wonder if that's a concern of his.
This was a bait and switch. This was using the specter of immigration. I'm surprised they didn't bring in, you know, transgender, you know, aliens. This was absolutely a fraud. This was a catastrophic failure. What did they get for all this, aside from the dead Renee Good, the dead woman? What did they get? They say they arrested 500 or detained 500.
Look at stupid face Nick Shirley over here. He can't even keep up. He's ready to go back and talk about the fake Somali fraud that he found over in Minneapolis, right? Remember that all of this stuff, this ramp up of federal agents, this started with Nick Shirley, right? I'm not saying like Joe Rogan that he's responsible, but you have to acknowledge the part that you played in highlighting this entire community that, you know, the ICE agents were there to support your reporting in the first place. Stupid 23-year-old Nick Shirley that doesn't know what benevolent means and can't pronounce it. He called it benevolent, whatever he did. But he was being interviewed by the guy on Channel 5 News.
500 undocumented immigrants so far in this operation in Minneapolis, in the Twin Cities. 500. How many of the 500 were the worst of the worst? Is it not a fact?
See, that's the thing. The Trump administration has put out the propaganda that all the illegal immigrants that are here are violent criminals that are looking to hurt Americans and sexually assault people. That's the messaging that they put out. And, you know, you may not like where it's ended up, but this was kind of the writing on the wall. So it was kind of the writing on the wall long before Trump got into office.
That 70% of the American people oppose the way this deployment has gone down. The Trump administration set the stage for this catastrophe.
That's true as well. I know I keep pausing it, but I believe it was some reporting over on Axios as well, where the YouGov poll, I think it was 36% approval of what ICE is doing. What does that mean? It was 36% approval of the immigration enforcement tactics that they're doing, which means 64% of people are not in agreement, whether that be some people are undecided or, you know, the majority of Americans disagree. 36% vehemently approve of it. So that's a small number in terms of approval, right? There's a lot of opposition to that.
This tragedy to happen. The southern border appears as you cannot, if you have to wear a mask when you go to work, then inherently there is dishonor in the work that you're doing. There's a reason why no law enforcement, absolutely not, in the United States of America wear masks. But for ICE agents, not even everybody in Customs and Border Patrol wear masks. It is specifically for this population. Why is that? We have to ask ourselves, why is it that unique in all of the hundreds of thousands of law enforcement officers, this cadre is mask wearing? It is because, I submit, they are doing work that is inherently unpopular.
And some of it illegal. And it's been posited that when the next administration comes in, if Trump doesn't run for a third term or some sort of like finagling happens that keeps him in power, if these things don't happen, they're saying, you know, they don't want somebody to be charged. It's been posited that they don't want these ICE agents to be identified and charged later on for their part that they're playing that is potentially infringing on people's rights. So, you know, I can't say for certain, but it's definitely been an idea that's out there.
They said they were going after the worst of the worst, and instead they're going after Rosa, the baker, or Pablo, the snow shoveler. It is a cop-out. I call on the president to end it. Stop sending military units to enforce this specific law. Be patient. You have stopped the supply of undocumented immigrants into the country. Be patient now. Go after the worst of the worst. Do police work. Get warrants. Get named warrants.
That's the thing, though. They can't be bothered to follow the law. Just like what was, you know, I was watching, I forgot, there was this guy, his name is PLO Lumumba. He's an African guy, and I think he's a professor of international affairs or something like that, whatever his thing was. But he was talking about how in Venezuela, you know, they couldn't even be bothered to do the full propaganda campaign. They're like, oh, well, it's about drug trafficking. And then as soon as they got there, they're like, okay, it's about oil. We need to get all of these oil companies in. Like, they completely abandoned the initial pretext for what their actual agenda was as soon as they got the opportunity. So this is the same thing with the Trump administration. It's not that, hey, we just want illegal immigrants. It's don't want brown people here, right? This is part of the Project 2025 and Heritage Foundation's ideology. They want to remake America into a white Christian nation. There are people there's probably going to be people in the comments that argue America is a white Christian nation and it belongs to us and we allow people to come here and we allow too many and now it's time for them to go home. Okay, you're going to scream until you're red in the face, right? And you're allowed to have whatever opinion that you want. But these people that have empowered and emboldened Trump in this second administration, they don't care about following the process because they just want the brown people gone. They want immigrants gone. They want the illegal immigrants gone, which the illegal immigrants, if you come here, I've said this time and time again, and I'll repeat it. If you come here without taking the proper steps to be accepted into the country, you've kind of taken the risk of being deported back to your home, right? You can't say, well, oh, I don't like my house, so I'm going to go move into my neighbor's house. Nobody's going to accept that. You wouldn't accept that in the home that you're living in. And when you look at the U.S., you know, we have a finite amount of resources. So you can't just say, oh, well, we'll just accept anybody in perpetuity. Like we have an infinite amount of slots and people can come here as much as they want, right? But the people that are in the administration and the designers of what this second Trump administration is going to look like, they don't necessarily care about just the illegal immigrants, as we talked about. So you guys can let me know what you think about that. That is Geraldo Rivera. Like I said, he is a right-wing person. I believe he used to be on Fox News or something like that. And the writing for Trump, the writing for the downfall of MAGA is on the wall. People are not, Trump, he's had a lot of people kind of break ranks with him, whether it be Joe Rogan, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Theo Vaughn, Andrew Schultz, Lauren Boebert. Thomas Massey is getting angry tweets from Trump all the time, angry Truth Social posts all the time. So it's like there are people on the right that are not. You had the guy that flicked Trump off, or he called Trump a pedophile protector or something, and then Trump flipped him off. The president flipped off a Ford factory worker, right? So people are not necessarily liking what Trump is doing. And even people on the right, they're breaking ranks with him. And there's only so long that the people that are in his ear can whisper in his ear how great he is, right? At some point, the veil is going to fall. Let's see what else we got. Yeah. Okay, so it said, this is what I was talking about. 33% said Trump was primarily deporting law-abiding citizens as opposed to criminals. And there was somewhere in here, another poll, it said 2 public surveys released this week, one from CNN, one from YouGov, found that most Americans said the agency was making the U.S. less safe. Another poll done by AP for after Good's death found that just 38% of Americans now approve of Trump's immigration policies. It's a losing policy. People want affordability. They don't want to see their neighbors get brutalized, right? Most people are well-intentioned, as indicated by that low approval rating of just 38%. All right, let me see if we got any chats down here. You guys talking to me? No, nobody cares what I got to say today. If you got something on your mind, tell me. We can talk. We can talk. All right, let's find out what's going on. I haven't looked at this, so this is Tim Walz. It says that he is being investigated by the Department of Justice. Let's look at this for the first time together, find out what's going on. But we know that Minneapolis is having a ton of problems, right? They had I think it was Feeding Our Future. That was the scam that got busted in 2024, in 2025, early 2025. A bunch of people ended up going to being charged and indicted. That was what spurred Nick Shirley, not Nick Fuentes. That's what spurred Nick Shirley to go over there and start looking into the Somali daycare fraud that he said that he uncovered, $110 million in 12 hours. Nobody believed the story. Some of it was debunked. But they've definitely had a spotlight over on Minneapolis. And it looks like Tim Walz, in addition to stepping down and not running for a third term as governor, he's being investigated. This is the way that Trump tries to bully, Trump and his administration try to bully their opponents. Let me get a sip of water. I'm running my mouth. All right, it says Trump DOJ investigating Tim Walz, Minneapolis mayor. Okay, and the Minneapolis mayor. Okay. It says the Justice Department on Friday launched an investigation into Minnesota Governor Tim Walz and Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey, or Free, whatever his name is, for allegedly obstructing federal law enforcement officers in their state, per a senior administration official. So following the Renee Good shooting, I don't know if you guys remember Jacob Frey. He got on TV and told ICE right here, it says, get the fuck out. Point blank period. Then people were calling for the abolishment of ICE. He kind of backtracked his statements. It was like, whoa, I don't want to abolish them. I just want you to go terrorize people in another city. He didn't say that verbatim, but he said he was not with abolishing ICE. It says the probe marks the administration's latest escalation with local and state leaders in Minnesota after ICE agents shot and killed 37-year-old Minneapolis mother Renee Nicole Good. DOJ is specifically investigating alleged violations of this U.S. Code, conspiracy to impede or injure officer. How are you going to charge the governor and the mayor? Like, what is the context in which you're saying that they're impeding or injuring officers? They only called for peace, right? I don't see in any instance where the mayor or the governor is like picking up snowballs, as it's been reported, and picking up ice and throwing it at ICE, right? They're not doing that. And they're calling for people not to do that. They're calling for a de-escalation of any sort of retaliatory action against ICE. It says Walz's office said the governor had not yet received any notice from DOJ about the investigation, which was reported by CBS. Weaponizing the justice system and threatening political opponents is a dangerous authoritarian tactic. We know this is what Trump does, right? Or not Trump specifically, but the MAGA and Trump administration, like this entire coalition, they try to bully you in the court. This is the same thing that they were talking about with the chair of the Federal Reserve. Like, Trump is not necessarily liking that he's not lowering rates fast enough. So he's like, okay, well, I know how to get you. I'm going to tie you up in the court and potentially put some charges on you, and that'll really make you sweat. And then you're going to start playing ball the way that I want you to. Well, Jerome Powell, he came back and said, point blank period, this is political. This is because I'm not lowering the interest rates. And he's like, okay, take me to court. We'll fight it out there. It says, weaponizing the justice system and threatening political opponents is a dangerous authoritarian tactic. The only person not being investigated for the shooting of Renee Good is the federal agent who shot her. That's true. That's 100% true. And I don't think that there's any intention to give a good, thorough, unbiased investigation, because at the end of the day, they put these people out on the streets and they're looking for some sort of confrontation with the public, and they're getting it, right? Both Waltz and Frey have been outspoken about the administration's action following the killing and strongly condemned the presence of ICE officers in the state. Frey last week said ICE agents should get the fuck out in response to the shooting and called the administration's defense of the officer bullshit. I don't see where he's lying, right? I think that those things are completely true. It is bullshit. That dude killed that lady when he was not an imminent threat, in imminent danger, and she did not hit him with her car. President Trump on Thursday once again floated invoking the Insurrection Act to deploy troops to Minnesota unless state officials, quote, stop the professional agitators and insurrectionists from attacking the patriots of ICE. I've been told that he's walked that back because it's unpopular. People in his administration are telling him, hey, you know, this kind of sentiment and this ICE, this ratcheting up of ICE is unpopular. And I've seen that he's called off the Insurrection Act or the possibility of it. We can check Truth Social to double check. Waltz encouraged Minnesotans to, quote, protest loudly, urgently, and also peacefully, which I think is the way to do it. If you think that you're going to take up arms against any law enforcement officers, no matter how bad that you're being brutalized, and I understand, like, people are like, okay, well, at what point do we fight back? This is big 2026, dog. Like, you're not going to, this is not like, oh, we're a bunch of foot soldiers and we're going to surprise you and overwhelm you. They know that you're coming long before you've come, right? So I don't know what people are thinking. Like, you shouldn't be, ICE should not be doing the thing that they're doing. They should not be shooting people, whisking people away in unmarked cars, 100%. But you're not going to win at the overwhelming odds and technology that law enforcement has. What you can do, though, what you should do is get out and protest, show them that you're not agreeing with what's happening, and also go vote. When it's time to go vote, voting or politics, in my opinion, is about telling people to prioritize your wants and needs, whatever those may be, right? And if you're saying, hey, well, I'm not going to vote because I don't believe in, you're basically telling people you have no priorities. Like, there's nothing that's a forefront issue for you. Like, you just go with the flow. Like it's a lazy river. I'll just go wherever you take me. And that's how we end up here, right? Where you're like, okay, well, I'll just do whatever Trump says. Okay, Trump says we're going to go after illegals and shoot 37-year-old moms in the face for driving off. And we're going to say, oh, she tried to run somebody over. Okay, that's the way I'll go. If you don't want that, then, you know, elections are around the corner. You know, 11 months is not a long time. It'll be here before you know it. So absolutely exercise the power that you do have, because these people, they can't stay in power forever. I know that they're talking about Trump running the third term or whatever, but at the end of the day, this is the system. The system is, hey, you have limited time. You have limited power. You have an extreme amount of power for a limited time. And when that time comes to an end, we, the people, have decided that you're being relinquished of it and we're going to move on, right? You're being fired from your job or your time in service is expired. So I agree with that, that people need to protest peacefully. And then when it's time to go to the ballot box and cast your vote, you tell people what your priorities are when you cast them by voting for the what's it called? The candidate that is prioritizing what you want. Because then that's how you're going to get the money behind it, the ideas behind it, and somebody that's willing to fight for it every day. It says, including film and law enforcement to establish records of exactly what's happening in our communities. Yeah, that's another thing I'm going to agree with. We have to encourage people to record what's going on. Because if you don't have the footage of Renee Good, if you don't have the footage of the kid getting whisked away from Target, then they could just make up whatever narrative that they want, right? Most people are not looking that deep into what's going on, unless it's a very, very huge story or something that's like so egregious that it spreads like wildfire across social media. So the best thing that you could do is have a film record, audio record of what's happening so that you can tell people the truth, not just the spin that mainstream media is going to put on it, or even somebody from the left or the right that wants you to paint it in a certain way. You can look for yourself, judge for yourself, and come to your own conclusions. All right. Do I have anything else? I think that's all I have for the day, man. I got some other stuff that's going on here, but I need to do some reading, right? It's been a busy week, and I'm not up to date on any new developments. I think I've talked about everything that I want to get off of my chest. Let me know if you have something that's on your mind, and we can absolutely talk about that. But until next time, don't add for the population, don't take away from the population. Peace.